Good evening to all, especially our first-time attendees and our non-U.S. members. We're very glad to have you all here. I'm very humbled to be here with all of you this evening, especially in the context of serving this association as president in a little bit, which has been my professional home for the past 28 years. And what I've learned is ACUHO-I is about you, our people, and building relationships. And within that context, for those who don't know me, who am I? I'm a husband, a father, a New Yorker, and a Mets fan. And yes, someone who is exceedingly passionate. As my wife would normally say at conferences and professional development activities, I'm referred to as Conference Tom. So for her benefit, welcome to ACUHO-I. We are glad to have you here, folks. I hope you're having a great time connecting with other people. You should see me on my campus for midnight breakfast. I won't do it, I promise. They want me to, no, I'm not gonna do it. Okay, seriously, like many of you, I never envisioned, well, some of you, I never envisioned doing this work. Residence life and housing for me was a vehicle for another path. By working as a hall director, I was able to receive an MFA. So what happened to that path? Well, I would argue that my preparation for directing theater has actually been really good preparation for our work. Like many of you, I work with drama all of the time. Dealing with unrealistic budget expectations, catching parents smoking pot in lounge with their son, responding to students who have never learned how to speak with their roommate about borrowing their underwear. Or finally, the student whose non-approved pet therapy rabbit escaped the room after a maintenance staff member came in to change a light bulb. The bunny didn't make it. I'm sure all of you could share your own I didn't make this up stories. Yes, that drama degree comes in very handy. And on this path, housing and residence life, I want to share with you a theme that I hope we have for this year. It's the same exact theme that Don Moore, in his remarks at the opening, said in his closing comment: listen for lessons that we learn through listening. From all my volunteer involvement in professional positions, I've always tried to listen to the leaders who led before me, whether it was a civic organization like the Greenwich Village Little League. Yes, there is Little League in Manhattan. Leaders on the campuses I've worked, or those who I've met in ACUHO-I. Listening to the perspectives of those who had a different journey on their path. From an ACUHO-I perspective, I've learned a great deal listening to former leaders share reflections about their thoughts before entering the presidency. And over the past few years, I was moved to do something for ACUHO-I when Jill Eckert said, and had a call to service, "What will you do for ACUHO-I?" Well, I thought about it, and I believe we were missing a service in the day of technology. I thought about how we could provide more timely updates on competencies in improving our work through a program called the V Roundtable, now led ably by my NYU colleague, Kate Beyer, and friend. The learning there was think of the gaps in our work and lead to fill them in. A year later, I learned how to best describe our residence hall experience thanks to Alma Celine. One of Alma's favorite 6-word descriptors was, which still resonates with me, learning is a full contact experience. We learn best when we are fully engaged and involved in our work. 2 years ago, I had the great pleasure of working with Venny Gore, who set the stage for us thinking about how we engage and how we are challenged to join the team and be all in. He shared a great concept and role model by leading the association about being in. Venny, I would join any team you lead. And this past year, Patty Martinez asked us to think about our motivation and what is our why? What drives you to do the things you choose to do in your role? Why was I motivated to run for office? Well, it was due to the people who led before, who inspired and challenged us all to give back. I also had transformative learnings in ACUHO-I through attending the first ever NHTI. Thank you, Norb and Pam. Also, speaking with our exhibitors in the hall and working with a group of 10 professionals doing research on the recruitment and retention of entry-level staff, I learned from listening. This year is especially important for us to listen as the Executive Board is now engaged in creating our collective 5-year strategic planning process, a process that will ask membership what's important, what will housing be facing, and how will we need to respond. Listening so we can create our next plan, which will be ably led by my colleague and friend, Alan Blattner. To begin the process of learning what others feel is important, a few weeks ago I sent 3 questions to one group of critically important stakeholders, our bosses, Chief Student Affairs Officers. I randomly surveyed 325 VPs and deans and received 112 responses, a 34% return rate. Paul Yar, that's not too bad, is it? Our research committee chair. What should ACUHO-I's, the 3 questions were, what should ACUHO-I's priorities be? What are the top 2 issues facing housing residents' life? And what questions do we need to be answered for our institutions? Listed on the screens are the collective answers to those questions. It's clear from the responses that we have some needs that we need to fill. One that stands out is having data to tell our story. Imagine if we had answers to the questions our campuses are struggling to know. What difference does residence hall living make on the overall college experience? How should ACUHO-I help answer that question? Isn't it time we had the data points for our bosses? Some potential ideas to respond when we finish setting our agenda for research is to recruit master programs to assign capstone projects that help our association, help fund doctoral students' dissertations that answer our questions, and turn to our partners in EBI and other corporate partners who help with data analysis to share our research agenda with faculty so they might get excited to do our research. And ask you, our peers, to get involved in research circles. To help craft an approach for us, I've appointed an ex officio board position for grad prep program engagement. Dr. Dawn Johnson from Syracuse University, who's on the faculty member in higher education, she'll be working closely with the board and our research committee to address these opportunities and outreach to our academic partners. As we engage in strategic planning process, it's important for us to reflect on the paths that underrepresented members of our profession take to meet their professional development needs. I've appointed a second ex officio board member, Dr. Alvin Sturdivant, who chaired the Placement Exchange and worked with the NASPA Undergraduate Fellows Program for 5 years to take on the role of Pathways to Success. Alvin will assist in leading an assessment by reviewing what other professional organizations are doing and what are the needs for underrepresented staff in competency building that are not offered at this point through the association. As I've listened to the members over the last few years, I've become more and more curious about 5 additional items. They are: how do we best internationalize the residence hall experience on our campuses? By integrating and preparing students for successful entry into a more globally minded society. Number 2, how do we capture member institutions' innovative practices so that others can emulate them on their campuses? Number 3, how do we as an association stay nimble to address our profession's needs? As governmental expectations are placed upon our campuses, is there a better way to responding with hot issues with information and ways to respond quickly? Rapid response teams. Are there levels of volunteer engagement to meet larger or small time commitments volunteers have to give, especially as our collective plates on our campuses get fuller? And finally, something critically important for us is how we are organized. I have often wondered why ACUHO-I, our US-based affiliates, and some of our non-US affiliates are not unified as one umbrella organization so that we can formally share direction, data, resources, and programs. Imagine if we not only shared information, but collectively worked to fund our research agenda, cooperatively embarked on training programs that were intentionally drawn from the body of knowledge, or thoughtfully cultivated entry-level staff into our profession as a group. Why are we separate? And does it make the most sense for the field of housing and residence life which I think is the most important in student affairs, when every other unit of student affairs professional associations are structured as one. The goal here is simply to ask the courageous question of whether or not our current affiliation with the regions makes the most sense, and to listen carefully to the feedback. Learning through listening. Patty noted why we need to do what we do. What's our why? In the organization last year, through her actions again tonight, she showed those. While I have learned so much from so many of you here, I've also learned lessons from my students. For those who know me well, I'm very fortunate to work at an institution that shares the values that I have and allows me to spend numerous hours each week with students. I advise RA Council. I have monthly engagements with RAs through game nights, book club, and dinners in our apartment. Finally, I get the honor of conducting a 30-minute qualitative one-on-one interview with every RA who's been hired at NYU for the last 8 years, 1,650 RAs. Why is that so important to me? Well, I'm given the opportunity to listen to their dreams and their aspirations, be invited into their lives, to hear their challenges, discuss their career plans, engage on topics such as family struggles, politics, and hear who their heroes are. FYI, moms still outrank dads, but we're closing the gap. These questions helped me understand who this generation of students are and what they value. During these interviews, one question remains constant. What is their favorite book? The books run the gamut, from children's stories to immigrant journey books, romance stories, the top 100 all-time favorite novels, historical and sci-fi, self-help and religious books, and still no vampire books. What do I learn from their favorite books? Things that motivate, excite, and deepen their imagination and knowledge for life, learning through listening. Last year, I had the distinct pleasure to share the podium with 4 very special colleagues to present on our findings and the interviews: Joanne Goldwater, Deb Schmidt-Rogers, Deb Boykin, and Joni Schmidt. What a treat it was to listen to the lessons they learned through RA discussions. And I would highly encourage each of you to join in the RA one-on-one engagements, especially CHOs. It is an uplifting experience, and one that unfortunately I find too few students have on our campuses, to engage with educators about them and their journey. One of the books that I read, #RAFaveBook, as I tweet them out, that makes me think about this group, ACUHO-I, is from Mitch Albom's book, Have a Little Faith. For those who haven't read it, the book is a true life story based on the author's decision to take on the request of his childhood rabbi to write and deliver the rabbi's eulogy when the time comes. Albom is reluctant to do so because he hasn't been in contact with the rabbi in decades. But Albom eventually makes the commitment to be the eulogist after the rabbi agrees to provide Albom with his history, his passion, relationships, and daily work over the next years before his untimely death. Similarly, how do we answer the call when we are asked to do something that initially inspires a no, whether it is a civic challenge, a family member needing support, an old friend asking for some guidance, or improving our work in housing and residence life? Finding a commitment to what we believe in is crucial. We have very rich diversity of thoughts, practices, and backgrounds, but in the end, we have a similar foci: to cultivate the best approach to inviting, facilitating, and offering involvement in meaningful community. And so, what I have learned through the RA interviews is how important it is to ask people to reflect on their lives. Just listen and watch people emote joy, share a tear, or proclaim the outline of an idea or dream they've been thinking about. So as I embark this year in what lies ahead in this role, like I do on my own campus with one-on-one with RAs, I'll be reaching out to member institutions and invite one member from a different institution every day to spend 15 to 20 minutes with me so I can gain an insight and feedback on the same exact questions that I asked the VPs to answer, and learn your favorite book. I've invited a few volunteers to also participate in this activity, though they don't need to do one every day. By doing this, I hope we get to speak to a rep of over 50% of our member institutions. I'll be sharing the learnings, moments via periodic updates, and watch for my daily TODs, hashtag TODs, thoughts of the day, for those who use Twitter. The ideas I spoke about are a lengthy list, but should make for a meaningful dialogue. How will we move forward? First, the representatives on the executive board are a very thoughtful, intelligent, and deliverable-driven group of individuals who are supported by an outstanding team of talented, caring, and always present central office staff, led so ably by Sally Traxler. We will collectively respond to your insights and ideas through the new strategic planning process. How will you, as our members, participate? I was always fearful that people would come up to me and say, "Whatever you need, Tom, I'm happy to assist." Because I know from my own experience that if you choose what you want to contribute, you're likely to see it through. But if you still feel the urge to ask, review some of the things I mentioned earlier. My suggestion would be to consider what you dream could be different in residence life and housing. Is it social media, RA training, new construction, sexual assault response? What have you learned and what can you share with colleagues? In what ways can you package the information to be beneficial to our profession? Blog about it, do a research project, or any other thing that you can think about in terms of giving back. So while I may not have a complete answer tonight to whatever you need from me, I'll help you to do, I would challenge you to hold yourself personally accountable and share your experience that makes us all better. Through this year of learning, through listening, it's my hope that just as Mitch Albom decided to do by listening to the rabbi in order to do the job he was asked to do, so can each of us take the time for our most important questions, share our innovative practices widely, and think about how we can better connect our affiliates in ACUHO-I to have a more cohesive voice in this process. Noting that our collective relevancy as educators in residence life and housing depends on what we choose to do with our time in our profession based on what we've learned. Thanks for listening to me this evening talk about my insights. Now it becomes our turn in the roles of executive board to listen and learn from our association members. Let's make the upcoming year of sharing our reflections of practice a year that sets the foundation to continue to make ACUHO-I the indispensable association for each of us. As you decide what to share about your learnings on your campus in 2014 and 15, I invite you to the 2015 ACUHO-I ACE, which will be hosted in beautiful, sunny Orlando, Florida. Orlando is a city that resonates with this association, building relationships, dreaming about the possibilities, and doing. With the energy and excitement we shared in DC, Orlando is a wonderful venue to come back and get ready to re-engage with the ACUHO-I family. So until June 27th to June 30th, 2015, safe travels, and now I declare the 2014 ACE officially over.